Good morning, everyone. My name is Rachel Brink, and I'll be hosting today's webinar, The Omni-Channel Customer Experience, 3 Ways to Successfully Incorporate Social Media into Your Customer Service Initiatives. It's a pleasure to have everyone joining us today. And today we have 2 very special guests with us, Guillaume Sainhoff and Hector Leal. Guillaume is the Director of Business Development and Marketing for 3CLogic. He has over 10 years of experience in sales and customer service, and he previously served as a VP at Charles Schwab, where he served 5 years in customer service and support before joining their wealth management team as one of the youngest financial sales consultants. He's an expert in sales and customer experience. He holds his undergrad degree from Boston College and received his MBA from the Smith School of Business at the University of Maryland. Hector Leal is the Director of Business Development for Help Social. Prior to joining the founding team at Help Social, he worked with a diverse group of customer-obsessed teams at Rackspace, where he helped ensure companies focused on their strategic customer goals. Prior to Rackspace, Hector spent 9 years at Apple building and piloting innovative customer programs that included custom CRMs, designing multi-channel support SLAs, and contributing to a centralized onboarding curriculum for newly hired support leaders. So at this point, what I'd like to do is turn this over to Guillaume. Guillaume, the floor is yours.
So what I'd like to do is to get things started is I'd like to try and take a holistic view of where the customer experience stands relevant to today's businesses and its relevance with regards to customers and their impact on the overall customer experience and the underlying businesses themselves. And the slide that I generally refer to on a regular basis is the one in front of you, which really highlights where customer experience is headed and its increasing importance, especially in relevance to price and product. In fact, by 2020, so by the end of this decade, customer experience is actually expected to overtake price and product as the key brand differentiator for today's businesses and those in the future. And I just want to take a second and really let that soak in. When you take a look at the majority of the business initiatives and focus that most organizations put, it tends to be heavily geared towards either making the best product or offering the most competitive price. And yet, the greatest opportunity for future customer loyalty and retention actually lies more in the customer journey and experience as opposed to purely the price and product that perhaps you may be providing. So really a telling point in terms of the role customer experience is presumably playing today and will in the future. And really, it already has had an impact. The slide here is from Watermark Consulting. It really highlights the performance for companies listed on the S&P 500 between the years of 2007 and 2012. And as you can see, holistically, for those listed on the index, they returned a very healthy 15.5%. And then if you expand out and look just purely at those that were customer experience leaders, you can see a significant improvement in overall performance that trickles all the way down to stock value, almost 3 times what the S&P returned in that same time period. Perhaps most notably and most telling is the impact that poor customer experience has. So if you look in the right-hand side, you can see those that lagged in providing the proper level of customer experience or meeting customer expectations actually yielded a negative return of almost 34%. In that same time period. So obviously, as much as customer experience seems to be sort of a term used loosely, and while everyone seems to agree how important it is, it does actually have tangible and quantifiable impact on the bottom line. And yet, what's most interesting is even today, there seems to be a huge disconnect between consumer and the businesses that serve them. In fact, if you survey most of today's companies, about 80% of them will tell you that they already provide superior customer service. And then if you survey their counterparts, the consumer base that they serve, only 8% of those respective clients would actually agree. So it highlights not only the challenges and a gap that currently exists, but obviously it points to an opportunity for those that actually can deliver on superior customer service. There's an opportunity for differentiation and obviously an opportunity to gain customers at the expense of those that obviously aren't giving it its due. But obviously, where things get a little bit complicated, especially as we move forward, is the world we live in today is truly a multi-channel world, which is a significant evolution if you look at where we originate from, especially as it relates to communication as a whole. For the longest time, and even today, the phone or telephony was the dominant form of communication that served customer and businesses. And yet, in the last 3 years, you saw the evolution of email, chat, and social media start taking a piece of that pie or sharing in those responsibilities. And then most recently, in the last 12 months, not only have those channels increased or gained more traction relative to their impact for consumers in relation to customer service, but you've also seen the evolution of additional channels, notably self-service, video, as well as SMS or texting. So by virtue of that, you can imagine it's not just a matter of providing customer service or good customer service, but being able to do it in a uniform fashion across all these channels. And that's not necessarily an easy thing to do, and that's why the opportunity lies, or there's an opportunity for competitive differentiation there, is for the very reason that very few will actually be able to achieve it well, or very few actually do it well today. And if you look at those same channels but broken down in terms of consumer preferences in relation to the complexity of the underlying inquiry, you can see that there's already distribution across all of them. And while phone and email obviously are still sort of the go-to channels, you can see that there's an increasing amount of adoption as it relates to online chat, text messaging, as well as social media. But since today's topic is mainly around social media and digital and customer service, the one thing that this chart does a very poor job of showing is how important social media is in terms of uncovering issues before they become complex ones. So as much as we rely on the traditional forms of communication, i.e. the telephone, to address complex issues, social media is very often the canary in the coal mine that helps us or helps alert us when there is an issue as it relates to a consumer or a consumer base. So while it may not necessarily be the most ideal platform for complex solutions or complex issues, it does serve as a very important indicator in terms of how well you're doing as it relates to, in relation to the public. And that's why it needs to have a role within the overall customer service initiatives that your business has. And if you look at consumers across the board, as I mentioned earlier, not only do you have to service them across all these mediums and channels, but their expectations at the same time haven't changed. In fact, they've actually increased. If you look at, for example, email response times, close to half of each consumer that you serve will expect a response to an email and inquiry in under 6 hours. As it relates to social media, they would expect a response to any type of tweet or Facebook posting of that nature of under 60 minutes. And at the same time, they're not necessarily that patient in relation to other mediums as well. So, for example, if a customer were to call you and you're unable to address their need at that point when they do, any type of future follow-up or second call, you're automatically going to see a drop in the overall customer satisfaction ratings, sometimes all the way up to a third. And what this has done is customers are constantly seeking out which institutions are able to meet their needs across all these mediums. And it's actually given way to a recently coined term called the switching economy, which refers to the fact that about 80% of consumers in most recent years have actually consistently changed providers purely due to poor customer service. And so it's that switching economy, the lack of customer retention and loyalty that actually is the underlying opportunity for those companies that are successful in actually meeting those expectations and demands as it relates to not only a multi-channel communication platform, but just overall customer experience. So if we look at social media specifically, obviously the topic of the day, what are the challenges in regards to applying social media within a customer care strategy? Well, there's a few, as you can imagine, and obviously Hector, being the expert, is going to cover a lot of these. But if I were to sort of just list them shortly, first and foremost, social media, unlike other traditional channels, email, phone, and so forth, is asynchronous. And Hector will certainly discuss what are the implications of that. In addition, social media tends to really generally not have a home with regards to customer support. Obviously, in most cases, as Hector will uncover and reveal to you, social media tends to be viewed as a sales and marketing tool and not necessarily as a customer service one. And yet, as I mentioned, the opportunity for social media and the benefit that it can provide certainly would make the case that, in fact, it does or should have some ties to the customer service and support arena, notably perhaps the contact center itself. But at the same time, one of the things that's restrictive as well is there seems to be a consistent lack of technological integration as it relates to social media to help facilitate a complete view into the voice of the customer. And at the same time, you'll find that most businesses, which is the final data point here, most businesses fail to have the proper policies and strategies to help guide and address social media within the customer service arena. So there are certainly a few challenges that have made it very difficult to implement social media within the customer service space. And yet, you're going to find, if you look and drill down, there are opportunities and benefits that would make the case that social media certainly has a role to play. So, for example, if you were to look at the performance of best-in-class companies versus everyone else, and you look at customer satisfaction ratings or customer retention or the increase in total revenue over a 12-month period, this is all from Aberdeen in one of their most recent studies, there's obviously a very notable difference between those that execute on all data points and those that do not. And one of the unifying things that you will find as it specifically relates to their activities and perception in terms of social media's role within the customer service space, you will find that they treat it as they would any other channel. They actually see it at times as a strategic differentiator for the business. And they also have a strategic plan to help dedicate social media and the information it provides across all the customer engagement channels as well. So they interlink them, and Hector will talk about the importance there. And then at the same time, they allow their agents to have access to prior social media interactions, allow escalation of issues or data points that may have come over social media channels, escalate them to other channels to be properly addressed, and then also make it available for agents to use with regards to prior history as it relates to the underlying customer. And these are what the best companies are doing today with regards to social media. And they stand out for the very reason that they're among the few, and yet they're the ones netting on all the benefits. So at this point, obviously Hector being the social media guru, I'd like to turn the table over to him, and he's really going to discuss what are the 3 things that you can do to successfully incorporate social media in your customer service initiatives and the impact. So Hector, the floor is yours.
Thanks, Guillaume. I don't know if I deserve that crown, but I'll certainly take it. So thanks for the introduction. So, what I want to talk about today are 3 ways or 3 areas to think about when planning for social media as a service channel in your contact center. Now, I think it goes without saying that the most important part of successfully delivering exceptional service through just about any channel is to have a plan. And in the case of social customer service, the strategy should align with whatever existing objectives you have today. So you'll want to define how you'd like to build, repair, and maintain relationships with your audience as a step 1. As expectations continue to rise, optimizing social media as a contact channel will require very clear steps of service. Now, we understand that social media is going to present unique challenges for every company, and it's likely that existing process-driven support avenues like phone, email, and chat already have these workflows down to a science. However, unlike those private channels, social is going to require an enhanced approach. Now, earlier Guillaume mentioned that unlike the phone, social media is asynchronous. So let's kind of pause for a second and think about that. Let's think about today's customer. Today's customer may try to get your attention by explaining an issue or an experience on Twitter. They'll then put their phone away, they'll board their flight or get on with their day, and let's say they land 3 hours later at their destination. They may decide to pick the conversation right back up. Now, a few things to think about as that's unfolding. How quickly were your agents in the contact center notified that an issue required their attention? Is that same agent even on shift still? And are they prepared to re-engage? What kind of information was discovered about the customer, and where was this information recorded, right? And what if it's a different agent, right? How do they pick that last conversation back up, or are we expecting the customer to start that all over again? There's no doubt that this barely scratches the various ways that customers can choose to begin their journey with your company. But who owns social media? We're starting to see a continuing shared responsibility with social media. Generally speaking, we can see here that marketing and PR groups were managing social media from the get-go. So I think by default, they're managing some of the social response. But I think institutionally, they weren't really built to respond and manage customer interactions. Well, they were designed to build an audience. And so support might be a distraction or beyond their field of expertise. So in this case, it's really not so much about trying to get that customer to stay on the line with you or trying to keep the conversation going immediately upon that tweet going out. It's more about the prompt acknowledgement that lets the customer know you're ready to help. So an effective social response program in your contact center means that agents are notified the moment an issue they care about arises, right? This contextual data will speed the delivery, and sometimes that includes passing this valuable social data, into another channel. So you're going to want to invest in social tools that are baked into the ecosystem and complement your existing processes versus, introducing new variables that can at times be, a little costly and disruptive. But what actually requires a response? So what we're talking about here is prioritization. The previous example was pretty clear that guy was trying to get our attention before he got on the plane. But not all mentions, tweets, or posts are directly geared to the company. So you want to create a priority framework that helps guide the agents to a prompt decision, right, so that they can have a real-time response for the customer. And they need a tool that's constantly listening for only the things that matter. Now, once that information comes in, there's really two buckets that social feed falls into when we think about how do we respond to our audience, right? There's critical, right? And we'll define that as something that needs a response or that needs to be routed and certainly resolved. Some examples could be a growing crisis situation or a direct question about your service or product. It could be a formal mention, and when I say formal mention, they're clearly using the company name, a particular hashtag, or even a company handle, and they're expressing dissatisfaction or bad experience. Now, when we think about important as a category for prioritization, that's more of something where we're recording, we're sharing, we're examining, we're learning about our customer. So it could be a promoter or influencer that's formally mentioning their experience in a social network, right? And kind of gathering that information to understand what patterns of behavior are we conducting in social networks and how do we repeat those things. It could be a social comment of your competitor, right? Maybe it's your audience, eliciting information from their network about what the competitor has to offer. Now, it could be something entirely outside the scope of customer service, but still related to the business. Think about unsolicited product suggestions. It could be something in relation to marketing campaign engagement. There's all sorts of scenarios where this valuable social data can be shared with the entire ecosystem. So when managing a social business, you'll also want to monitor metrics, but you're not going to want to manage them. And what I mean by that is, today in the contact center, the speed of response or the speed of resolution is important, right? It helps us gauge the effectiveness of an agent over the phone or over chat, and ultimately it's helpful at revealing training opportunities and process improvement. But initially, managing specifically to a speed metric may create a situation where the top priority is just getting to the next tweet. And it may be ending the engagement early or prematurely. And so what we want to do is encourage quality service and train for a process or train for a system that's efficient. And obviously you're going to want to reward the agents for those customer outcomes or positive customer feedback. And, over time, you'll learn and you'll classify the most common issues that arise in social, and then you'll use that valuable insight to shape your service level agreements, your FAQs, or even creating linked guides to share with customers in your social networks for those topics that are recurring discussions. So hopefully these examples give you a good starting point, because operationalizing social customer service ultimately means you need to define what's most important to your audience and then having that align with your current business objectives. So when we think about a unified contact center program that's focused on delivering exceptional service, what we're talking about is giving the ability for agents to continue working on their speed of delivery and without getting caught up in some complicated procedure or some new technology or application. And let's talk about technology for a second. So great, we've talked about social business processes. We've highlighted a few key areas to start improving the customer journey. Let's talk a little bit about what many forward-thinking SaaS companies already know. In short, it's all about integrating systems and about the API economy. You know, there are so many different types of customer service applications spread across every business. You know, scalable apps really should have an open API. And the reason is it allows for data to be shared and functional customization so that legacy systems and older applications can be used together with new applications or custom-built internal tools. You know, APIs bring all this siloed information together and builds teams and aligns teams so they can serve customers across any channel consistently. And having a true omni customer experience means that now social data can flow unobtrusively into those other systems. You know, up until recently, things like this were not possible. You know, we see here that 60% of failed first call resolutions were due to a lack of context. And yes, it says systems data and customer info, but really what we're talking about is identifying who our customers are and what type of relationship they have with our company. You know, a few other points surrounding what an API can do to advance your applications. You're essentially building off a proven platform, right? You can reduce costs and risk that's generally associated with new implementations. You need to think about social as part of the ecosystem. You need to think about it just as another communication channel in your contact center. And the best way to approach it is by integrating those applications within that unified program. You know, it's great because taking that approach, it allows the business to scale with changes in the market. It allows it to satisfy new business requirements and ultimately adapt to customer demand. You know, and really today regarding customer demand, there's really a moment when our customers, and myself included, when we're more than, you know, an arm's length away from our mobile devices, right? With so many different ways to get in touch with a customer service rep, I think the expectation really is, you know, customers believe service should be on demand and on their terms, right? Real time. So, you know, if my flight's late and I'm going to miss a connection, instead of calling a number, I might just send a single tweet and ask to get on a different flight. Now, if I do prefer calling in, I can Google from my phone and look up the phone number and book my new flight. And basically what I'm saying is mobile is speeding everything up. So whether the customer picks up the phone first and starts a chat and finishes up with a tweet, API-driven technologies allow that customer history to flow into any channel that works for them. You know, the great thing about this approach is that it bolsters the perception that you're available based on your client's terms and not limited to a set of tools that might have not been designed for the quote-unquote age of the customer. Now, what's the use of having all these great policies and processes and technologies if we haven't covered the most important ingredient in executing these items? Training your agents. The most important ingredient for all of this to work are your internal customers. So if your employees aren't empowered, if they're not confident, and they're not frequently sharpening their service skills, all the planning in the world is not going to get you any closer to satisfying customers over Twitter, Facebook, or any other network for that matter. As you can see here, for every 1% of FCR improvement, contact centers will see a 1% uptick in customer satisfaction rates. And employees will see 1% to 5% improvement in their satisfaction. Right? So there's a lot of support factors that deserve both training and governance. And here's another easy way to think about what to strive for with training. Right? Ultimately, one of the outcomes of training should be you should surprise and delight your customers regardless of the channel they choose to engage your brand in. You want to protect your customers from risk, and you want to protect your brand from risk. So hire well and invest in great training. You know, you'll want to trust your employees, right? They're tasked with keeping your customers happy. And they should be empowered to make decisions to do what's right for customers in just about any situation. And, you know, there's a lot of really great examples of this. You know, earlier, Guillaume kind of told you about our experience with customer service, and it goes all the way back to delivering customer service at Rackspace. So for those of you that are not familiar with Rackspace, think about Zappos, right? They're leaders in their industry because they empower their front line. So if you're worried about customer service representatives making bad decisions, you might also want to be worried about them speaking with your customers altogether. So realistically, we do understand that managing a social policy and training are two different things. However, purpose-driven training should be the bedrock of any social policy's effectiveness. So, we talked about three different things, right? To summarize, we talked about incorporating social media into a broader multi-channel, omni-channel communication strategy. We also talked about applications and the solutions they provide when they're driven by an API. And ultimately tying all of that together and making sure those things can execute well for your customers means that you're going to need to train and foster the building of skills with your agents.
Hector, I couldn't have said it better myself. I think that's a fantastic summary with regards to how social media should be implemented and what are some of the key points that need to be taken into consideration when you try and sort of determine the role social media can effectively play within the broader picture of customer care within the multi-channel world that we obviously live in. So, obviously, I think that was all very, very informative, and thank you for that. What I think would be helpful real quick is for our viewers who are not necessarily that familiar with 3CLogic, or for that matter, Help Social, is just provide some very quick background on what both companies actually provide. So with regards to 3CLogic, we are actually a complete cloud contact center solution. And we are a multi-channel platform, specifically phone, email, text, and chat. And obviously, by virtue of our relationship with Help Social, we're obviously in the process of trying to really determine how we can implement within the contact center space some of the very things that we've discussed today as it relates to social media. But in that stead, we do provide third-party integrations, as well as all the traditional contact center features that you would expect, including a predictive dialer, ACD, IVR, skill-based routing, call recording, and all the QA, agent monitoring, and training you would expect, all wrapped into a very advanced reporting and business intelligence tool. So that's 3CLogic, and I'll pass the buck over shortly to Hector here with regards to Help Social.
Thanks, Guillaume. We were founded last year, and we're based in San Antonio, Texas, and we're helping organizations of all shapes and sizes unlock their full potential in social media as it relates to customer service. So, we provide a social monitoring and response platform, and one of the strengths of this platform is it's the world's first response platform built with an open API. Along with web and mobile apps and some of the other solutions you see that we provide, I think what it comes down to is we're a customer service geared company that happens to make a really cool platform for customers to pick and choose what matters most in their social customer service strategy.
Guillaume, Hector, thank you again for your time. I'm sure everyone has found this to be an extremely informative webinar. As a reminder to our viewers, if you're interested in finding out more about 3CLogic or Help Social, contact information is provided here on your screen. And please keep in mind that 3CLogic does host regular monthly webinars, so please refer to our calendar if you're interested. Thanks again.